Growing up in the Hartwell family meant understanding your place in the hierarchy. My sister Rachel was born first, and from the moment she arrived, she was perfection incarnate. Beautiful, charismatic, the kind of child who could charm anyone within 30 seconds of meeting them. I came along 3 years later, quieter, bookish, far less interested in being the center of attention. By the time I was 10, the roles were set in stone. Rachel was the golden child. I was there. Our parents never said they loved her more. They didn't have to. It showed in 1,000 tiny ways. The elaborate birthday parties Rachel received versus the small family dinners for mine. The way Mom would beam when Rachel walked into a room. The way Dad's eyes would light up when she called. The college fund they emptied for Rachel's sorority dues and spring break trips to Cabo, while telling me I'd need to figure out scholarships and loans for my state school education. I learned early not to complain. Complaining made me difficult. Pointing out the disparity made me jealous and petty. So I stayed quiet, worked hard, and built my own life with my own hands. The real shift happened when our grandmother, Dad's mother, got sick. Grandma Dorothy had always been different with me. While everyone else orbited around Rachel's light, Grandma saw me.
Really saw me.
She'd ask about my classes, my interests, my dreams. She was the one who encouraged me to pursue architecture when everyone else said I should pick something more practical. During her final year, I was the one who showed up. Not because I expected anything in return, but because I loved her. I'd drive 3 hours every weekend to her house in Asheville. I'd help her with groceries, take her to appointments, sit with her while she watched her favorite classic films. We'd talk for hours about design, about buildings that told stories, about creating spaces where people felt safe. Rachel visited twice that entire year, both times when Mom guilt-tripped her into it. Both visits lasted less than 2 hours. 3 months before Grandma Dorothy passed, she asked me to meet her at her attorney's office. I thought maybe she needed help with paperwork, understanding some medical directive or estate document. Instead, I walked into a meeting that changed everything. "Sweetheart," she said, holding my hand across the conference table, "I want you to have the estate."
Ist sehr her. Grandma, no.
Dad's your son. It should go to him, or be split between Rachel and me, or... "Your father will be fine," she interrupted gently. "He has his career, his own assets. And your sister?" She paused, choosing her words carefully. "Your sister has always been given everything she's ever wanted. But you, my dear girl, have had to earn every single thing you have. You've worked hard. You've been kind. And you've been here." The estate wasn't massive by billionaire standards, but it was substantial. The main house in Asheville, a beautiful 1920s craftsman on 3 acres. A smaller rental property in Charlotte. And a portfolio of investments that Grandma had quietly built over 40 years of careful financial management. Total value, approximately $2.8 million. "I'm leaving it all to you," she said firmly. "But I'm doing it through an irrevocable trust that executes immediately, not through my will. I don't want her parents trying to contest this or pressure you into sharing with your sister. This is yours. You've earned it through loyalty and love, not obligation." I cried. She held me. And then we signed the papers. She made me promise not to tell anyone. "Let them think it's going through my will like normal," she said. "Let them assume whatever they want to assume. When the time comes, the truth will reveal itself." Grandma Dorothy passed away peacefully 4 months later. At her funeral, Rachel cried dramatically, making sure everyone saw her grief. Mom kept saying how hard this was for the family. Dad looked genuinely sad. He and his mother had been close, in his own distant way. I grieved quietly, privately, the way I'd learned to do everything. After Grandma's death, life moved forward. The estate transferred to me through the trust, exactly as planned. The attorney, a sharp woman named Carolyn Pierce who'd worked with Grandma for 20 years, handled everything with discretion. No public records tied my name to the properties immediately. The trust was structured to maintain privacy. I could have told my family then. Part of me wanted to, but something Grandma said kept echoing in my mind. "Watch how people treat you when they think you have nothing. That tells you who they really are." So I watched. I was 26, working at a mid-sized architecture firm in Charlotte, making $58,000 a year. Perfectly respectable, but nothing remarkable. I'd moved into a small apartment after graduate school, drove a 10-year-old Honda Civic, dressed in clothes from Target and TJ Maxx. To my family, I looked exactly like what they'd always expected, the less successful daughter who'd done fine but nothing spectacular. Rachel, meanwhile, had married Bradley, whose parents owned a successful chain of furniture stores across North Carolina. She didn't work, she managed the household, in their 4,000-square-foot home in South Charlotte. She drove a Mercedes, carried a Louis Vuitton bag, posted constantly on social media about her blessed life. Mom and Dad were endlessly proud. Every conversation somehow circled back to Rachel's accomplishments, even though most of them were actually Bradley's family's accomplishments. Rachel's hosting a charity gala at the country club, Mom would announce. Bradley just bought Rachel the most beautiful diamond bracelet, Dad would say. Meanwhile, when they asked about me, it was always with a slight undertone of pity. How's the little apartment? Still driving that old car? Have you thought about finding a nice man to settle down with? I'd smile and nod and share nothing real. Behind the scenes, I was building something real. I'd rented out the Charlotte property for $2,200 a month, creating steady passive income. I'd kept the Asheville house exactly as Grandma left it, visiting every few weeks to maintain it and feel close to her memory. And I'd started investing seriously, using Grandma's portfolio as a foundation and adding my own contributions. By my 30th birthday, I'd grown the estate value to $3.4 million. I'd been promoted twice in my firm. I was designing significant projects, a community center, a small mixed-use development, a renovation of a historic theater. But to my family, I was still just doing okay. The breaking point came at Dad's 65th birthday party. Rachel spent the entire evening making sure everyone knew about her upcoming trip to Italy, the kitchen renovation Bradley was funding, her daughter's acceptance to an elite private school. When someone politely asked me about work, Rachel cut in, "Oh, she does something with buildings. Still at that same little company, right?" Mom laughed. Well, not everyone can marry well. The guests looked uncomfortable. I smiled and excused myself to the bathroom, where I stood looking at my reflection and making a decision. I wasn't going to tell them about the money. Not yet. But I was going to stop pretending their opinions mattered. The Thanksgiving invitation came in mid-October. Mom called, which was unusual. She normally texted. "We need to discuss something important at Thanksgiving," she said. "The whole family needs to be there." "What's going on?" I asked. "Your father and I are getting older. We need to start planning the estate transition. Rachel and Bradley will be there, obviously. We'd like you to attend as well." As well. Like I was an afterthought. Which, of course, I was. "I'll be there," I said simply. Over the next few weeks, I heard pieces of the plan through the family grapevine. My aunt mentioned that Mom and Dad were finally putting everything in Rachel's name. My cousin texted me sympathetically, "Sorry about the inheritance thing. That's rough." I didn't respond to any of it. I just called Carolyn Pierce. "They're planning to announce that they're signing their estate to my sister," I told her. At Thanksgiving dinner, in front of the whole family. Carolyn was quiet for a moment. "And you want to?" "I want to be prepared," I said. "I want documentation ready. Because I have a feeling this announcement isn't going to be just about their estate. I think they're going to try to claim Grandma's estate should have gone to Dad, and by extension to Rachel." "They can't," Carolyn said firmly. "The trust was irrevocable and executed before your grandmother passed. It's been yours for 4 years. They have no legal claim." "I know," I said. "But that won't stop them from trying to pressure me morally, emotionally. They'll make it about family and fairness and doing the right thing." "What do you want me to do?" Carolyn asked. "I want you at Thanksgiving dinner," I said. "Hidden. Ready. When the moment comes, I'll text you. And then I want you to walk in with every piece of documentation that proves what I own, what I've built, and what they're trying to claim." Carolyn laughed, a sharp, satisfied sound. "I've been waiting 4 years for this moment. Let's do it." The week before Thanksgiving, I worked with Carolyn to prepare what she called the Truth Portfolio. It was a beautiful leather folder containing Asterisk the original irrevocable trust documents showing transfer of all Grandma's assets to me in 2019. Asterisk updated property valuations for both the Asheville estate, $1.8 million, and Charlotte rental, $520,000. Asterisk investment portfolio statements showing current value of $1.1 million. Asterisk tax returns proving I'd been paying all property taxes, insurance, and maintenance costs for 4 years. Asterisk rental income records from the Charlotte property. Asterisk a timeline of my visits to Grandma during her final year. I'd kept a calendar versus Rachel's 2 visits. But there was more, because over the past month, I'd started asking questions. And what I discovered made everything worse and perfect. Rachel had been telling people she was managing rental properties. She'd mentioned it casually several times at family gatherings, saying she and Bradley had an investment portfolio including rental real estate. She was vague about details, but the implication was clear. She had income properties. But when I hired a private investigator, discreetly, thoroughly, I discovered something interesting. Rachel and Bradley had exactly 0 rental properties. What they did have was a mountain of debt. Credit cards maxed out at $67,000. A home equity line of credit borrowed to the limit at $180,000. Car leases they could barely afford. The country club membership Bradley's parents were paying for because they couldn't manage it themselves. And here's where it got criminal. 5 years ago, when Grandma Dorothy was starting to decline, Rachel had helped her with some paperwork. At least, that's what she'd told everyone. What she'd actually done was get Grandma to sign power of attorney documents Grandma's original attorney had known nothing about. Using that power of attorney, Rachel had transferred $85,000 from Grandma's checking account to her own account over a period of 8 months. She'd done it in small increments. $3,000 here, $5,000 there, small enough that Grandma, who was getting confused with finances, hadn't noticed. By the time Grandma signed the irrevocable trust giving everything to me, that money was long gone. And the power of attorney had expired with Grandma's death, so the paper trail was cold. But I had found it. My investigator had found it. And Carolyn had confirmed it was prosecutable elder financial abuse. I had a choice: expose Rachel's theft or keep it quiet. I decided to keep it in reserve. If Rachel wanted to make Thanksgiving dinner into a war, I'd have the nuclear option ready. Thanksgiving arrived cold and crisp. I drove to my parents' house in my Honda Civic, wearing a simple sweater and jeans. Rachel pulled up in her Mercedes, dressed like she was attending a fashion shoot, not a family dinner. "Nice car," she said sweetly as I locked my door. "Still running, I see." "Still running," I agreed cheerfully. Inside, the house smelled like turkey and tension. Mom had set the dining room table with her good china. Dad was carving the turkey with more focus than necessary. My aunt, uncle, and 2 cousins were already seated, looking vaguely uncomfortable. We made small talk through appetizers. Rachel dominated the conversation, talking about Italy, her kitchen renovation, her plans to redecorate for Christmas. Finally, as we sat down to the main meal, Dad cleared his throat. "We asked everyone here today because we have an important announcement," he said formally. "Your mother and I are getting older. We need to start thinking about estate planning and legacy." Here it comes, I thought. Mom smiled at Rachel. "We've decided to sign our estate, the house, our retirement accounts, everything, to Rachel and Bradley. They have the stability, the family structure, to handle these assets responsibly." Rachel's face lit up with practiced surprise. "Mom, Dad, are you sure? This is so generous." "You've earned it," Dad said firmly. "You've built a wonderful life. You've given us a granddaughter. You've made us proud." My aunt looked at me sympathetically. My cousin grimaced. Then Rachel turned to me, her smile sharp. "Mom and Dad are signing the estate to me. You get nothing." The table went silent. Everyone stared at her, shocked by the cruelty of saying it out loud. But Rachel wasn't done. "I mean, it makes sense, right? I have a family. I have a home. I have responsibilities. You're doing fine on your own." "Rachel," my uncle said uncomfortably. "What?" Rachel said innocently. "I'm just being honest. Some of us have built lives that need financial support. Some of us are content with simple apartments and old cars. Everyone cheered. Well, not cheered exactly, but Mom and Dad nodded approvingly. Bradley raised his wine glass in agreement. The room consensus was clear. This was fair, this was right, this was how it should be. I took a sip of water, put down my glass, and smiled. Dad, I said calmly, should I tell them or will you? Dad looked at me, confused. Tell them what? About Grandma's estate. His fork, mid-reach for the mashed potatoes, stopped.
Froze.
Then dropped back to his plate with a loud clatter. The room went silent. Mom's eyes narrowed. What about Grandma's estate? Rachel leaned forward, her predatory smile firmly in place. Oh, this should be good. Let me guess, you think you deserve some of it. Actually, I said, still smiling, I already have all of it. The confusion was beautiful. Rachel laughed, a sharp, dismissive sound. What are you talking about? Grandma's estate goes through probate, which means nothing, I interrupted, because Grandma didn't leave her estate through a will. She transferred it through an irrevocable trust 4 months before she died.
To me.
Silence. Then Rachel screamed, Tell us what? I pulled out my phone and sent a single text. Now. 30 seconds later, the doorbell rang. Dad stood up automatically. Who could that be? We're in the middle of. I stood up smoothly. That would be my attorney. I walked to the door and opened it. Carolyn Pierce stood there in a sharp charcoal suit, carrying a leather briefcase and looking every inch the competent legal professional she was. Good evening, she said pleasantly. I'm Carolyn Pierce, estate attorney for Dorothy Hartwell's trust. May I come in? I stepped aside. She walked past me into the dining room, where my family sat frozen in various states of shock and confusion. Carolyn set her briefcase on the empty chair and opened it. Thank you for having me. I understand there's been some discussion about estate inheritance tonight. I thought it might be helpful to clarify the legal facts. She pulled out the leather folder and opened it to the first document. In March of 2019, Dorothy Hartwell executed an irrevocable trust transferring all of her assets, including her primary residence in Asheville, valued at approximately $1.8 million, a rental property in Charlotte valued at $520,000, and an investment portfolio currently valued at $1.1 million, to her granddaughter. She looked up and nodded at me. The transfer was complete and legal. It executed immediately, not upon Mrs. Hartwell's death. The assets have belonged to her granddaughter for over 4 years. Dad's face had gone completely white. That's not, she wouldn't have. I assure you, she would have and did, Carolyn said calmly. She pulled out another document. Here's the signed trust agreement, notarized and witnessed. Here are the property deeds, transferred and recorded with the county. Here are 4 years of tax returns showing your daughter has paid all property taxes, insurance, and maintenance costs. Here are statements from the Charlotte rental property showing consistent income of $2,200 per month, all received by your daughter. She laid each document on the table like evidence in a trial. Rachel was staring at the papers, her face shifting from confusion to anger to panic. This is fake. This has to be fake. Grandma wouldn't cut out the family like that. She didn't cut out anyone, I said quietly. She gave her estate to the person who showed up, who visited every weekend, who sat with her, who cared about her as a person, not an inheritance. You manipulated her, Rachel shrieked, standing up so fast her chair tipped backward. You convinced a dying old woman to give you everything. That's elder abuse. Actually, Carolyn said, her voice ice cold. Speaking of elder abuse, we should discuss that. She pulled out another folder, one I hadn't expected her to bring tonight. In 2018 and 2019, someone used power of attorney documents to withdraw $85,000 from Dorothy Hartwell's accounts. Small transactions spread over 8 months. Mrs. Hartwell, who was beginning to struggle with financial management, didn't notice. Rachel went very, very still. The power of attorney was signed by Rachel Hartwell, now Rachel Morrison. The money was transferred to her personal checking account. Mom gasped. Dad's hands were shaking. Bradley was staring at his wife like he'd never seen her before. That's a lie. Rachel shouted. I helped Grandma. I paid her bills for her. Then you'll have receipts, Carolyn said calmly. Proof that the money went to pay Mrs. Hartwell's expenses and not into your personal accounts for your own use. We'd be happy to see those receipts. The district attorney's office would also be interested. The district attorney. The words hung in the air like a guillotine blade. Rachel's mouth opened and closed. No sound came out. Bradley stood up slowly. Rachel, he said quietly, dangerously. Tell me she's wrong. Rachel's eyes filled with tears, her go-to manipulation tactic since childhood. It was just a small amount. Grandma had plenty. She wouldn't have minded. You stole from your dying grandmother. I said, my voice still calm, but now carrying an edge of steel I'd never used with my family before. You stole $85,000 while she was confused and vulnerable. And then you showed up to her funeral and cried for the cameras. Everyone makes mistakes. Rachel shrieked. You can't ruin my life over this. I'm not ruining your life, I said. Your choices did that. I'm just done pretending not to notice. Mom finally found her voice. This is family business. We handle this privately. No lawyers, no police, no. No consequences? I finished. That's what you mean, right? Rachel does whatever she wants and faces no consequences because she's the golden child. Dad shook his head slowly, still in shock. The estate, you've had the estate for 4 years? You've been collecting rent, managing properties, and you never said anything? Grandma asked me not to, I said simply. She wanted to see how you'd all treat me when you thought I had nothing. Now we all know. Carolyn checked her watch. I need to be clear about something. The estate transfer is final and uncontestable. There is no legal mechanism by which anyone in this family can claim any portion of those assets. Any attempt to pressure, harass, or manipulate, she looked directly at Mom and Dad, will be documented and, if necessary, addressed legally. She closed her briefcase. The elder financial abuse, however, is a separate matter. That's a decision your daughter will need to make about whether to pursue prosecution. All eyes turned to me. Rachel's face was streaked with tears. Real ones now, not performed. Please, she whispered. Please don't do this. I have a daughter. I have a family. This would destroy everything. I looked at her for a long moment. At my sister, who'd gotten everything she ever wanted handed to her on a silver platter. Who'd never faced real consequences for anything. Who'd stolen from our dying grandmother and called it helping. I'm not making any decisions tonight, I said finally. But I want you to understand something, Rachel. For 30 years, I watched you get everything while I got nothing. I stayed quiet. I stayed small. I let you shine while I disappeared into the background. And I did it because I loved this family, and I wanted peace. I stood up, Carolyn standing with me. But Grandma saw the truth. She saw who I really was and what I was capable of. She gave me a foundation, and I built something real on it. Not handed to me, not given because of birth order or charm, earned through loyalty and love and actual work. I looked around the table, at my parents, at Rachel and Bradley, at my aunt and uncle and cousins who'd witnessed everything. You all decided tonight that I deserve nothing, that I'm worth nothing compared to Rachel's stable life and wonderful family. You made that choice loudly and publicly. So now I'm making my choice. I picked up my purse. I'm done being the forgotten daughter. I'm done being small to make you feel big. And I'm done pretending this is a loving family when it's only ever loved one of us. Carolyn handed me a card. My contact information. If anyone has questions about the estate or needs clarification on legal boundaries, they can reach me during business hours. We walked toward the door together. Behind us, chaos erupted. Rachel sobbing, Mom trying to speak, Dad still frozen in shock. At the door, I turned back one last time. Happy Thanksgiving, I said quietly. And then I left. I didn't go home immediately. Instead, I drove to the Asheville house, Grandma's house, my house, and sat on the porch in the cold November darkness. My phone started ringing within minutes. First Mom, then Dad, then my aunt, then numbers I didn't recognize. I turned it off. Carolyn texted, "You okay?" I typed back, "Better than okay. Free." The next morning, I turned my phone back on to find 47 missed calls and 82 text messages. I scrolled through them without opening any. Mom, how could you humiliate us like this? Dad, we need to talk about this rationally. Rachel, you're destroying my family. My cousin Sarah. Holy shit. That was the most badass thing I've ever witnessed. I smiled at Sarah's message and responded. Thanks. Want to come visit the Asheville house sometime? She replied immediately. Yes. God, yes. I've always wanted to see it. Over the next week, the family dynamics imploded spectacularly. Bradley filed for separation from Rachel 3 days after Thanksgiving. According to my cousin, he'd had no idea about the debt Rachel had accumulated, the credit card she'd hidden, or the money she'd stolen from Grandma. He was furious, not just about the theft, but about the lies. Rachel moved back in with Mom and Dad, who were suddenly faced with supporting their daughter and granddaughter financially. The irony was not lost on me. Mom called me once, 2 weeks after Thanksgiving. I answered. We need to discuss this estate situation, she said without preamble. No, we don't. I replied calmly. Your grandmother would want you to share with family. My grandmother made her wishes crystal clear. I interrupted. She wanted me to have her estate. She knew exactly what she was doing and why. If you didn't like her choice, you should have shown up more during her final year. Silence. You're being selfish, Mom finally said. No, I said. I'm being honest. There's a difference. I hung up. Dad tried a different approach. He showed up at my apartment 3 weeks after Thanksgiving, looking older and tired. Can I come in? He asked. I almost said no, but something in his face made me step aside. We sat in my small living room, tension thick between us. I didn't know, he said finally, about what your mother and Rachel were planning to say. About the you get nothing part. That was cruel. It was honest, I said. That's how you've all felt about me for 30 years. Rachel just said it out loud. He flinched. That's not true. Dad, I said gently. When's the last time you called me just to talk? Not to ask about Rachel, not to discuss logistics, just to see how I'm doing. He opened his mouth. Closed it. Couldn't answer. When's the last time you came to see something I designed? I've worked on 3 projects in Charlotte that won awards.
Did you know that?
He shook his head slowly. I'm not angry, I said, and I realized it was true. I'm just done. I can't keep being the daughter you barely notice while Rachel gets everything, your attention, your pride, your estate. I'm building my own life now, without you. Dad stood up slowly. At the door, he paused. Your grandmother would be proud of you. I know, I said. That's why she gave me everything. He left. Spring came to North Carolina with dogwoods blooming and warm sunshine. I stood on the porch of the Asheville house, fully renovated now, with the contractor's final walkthrough complete, and felt something I hadn't felt in years.
Peace.
I'd made my decision about Rachel's theft. I wasn't pressing charges. Not because she deserved mercy, but because I deserved peace. The threat of prosecution was enough. It hung over her like a sword, ensuring she'd never come after me or my assets again. Carolyn had helped me establish clear legal boundaries. Any family member attempting to contest the trust or pressure me to share would face immediate legal action. Mom and Dad had gotten the message. Rachel and Bradley's divorce had finalized. She'd gotten a job, her first real job in years, working at a bank. She was learning what it meant to support herself. Sometimes I wondered if it would change her. Probably not. But that wasn't my problem anymore. My cousin Sarah had become a regular visitor to the Asheville house. We'd spent weekends hiking, talking, rebuilding the family relationship we'd never really been allowed to have when we were younger. She was the sister Rachel never was. At work, I'd been made partner at my firm. We were designing a major mixed-use development in downtown Charlotte, my name on the project as lead architect. The career I'd built quietly, without family support or recognition, was flourishing. I'd sold the Charlotte rental property for $580,000 and reinvested the proceeds. The investment portfolio had grown to $1.3 million. The Asheville house, after renovations, was worth $2.1 million. Total estate value, $3.4 million. All mine. All earned. All built on the foundation a grandmother gave to the granddaughter who showed up. My phone buzzed. A text from Carolyn. Dinner this weekend? Celebrating your new project. I smiled and typed back. Absolutely. As I locked up the house and drove back to Charlotte, I thought about that Thanksgiving dinner. About Rachel screaming. About Dad's fork dropping. About the moment I stopped being small and claimed what was rightfully mine. Grandma Dorothy had been right. Watching how people treat you when they think you have nothing tells you who they really are. And walking away from people who don't value you, even if they're family, isn't cruelty. It's survival. It's freedom. It's choosing yourself after a lifetime of being chosen last. I turned on the radio, rolled down the windows, and drove toward my future. The one I built. The one I earned. The one that was finally completely mine.